You know, if we're going to talk about the Dreamcast and all of its games, we have to start with the controllers. Can't play games without a controller, and, you know, it's our first episode, so fuck it. We'll start small. There's really not too much to say about the controllers anyway, so it's not going to be long. You know, everything that's been said about these things has been said already, but we might as well go over them. So, join us, won't you? Let's boogie. Let's motor. Let's get down to it. Let's rock and roll. You ready to motor? Let's load out. Let's roll out. Autobots, roll out. So this is the standard Dreamcast controller, and man, do people love to shit all over this thing. It's obviously designed to resemble a Sega Saturn 3D control pad with its Japanese color scheme. It has 4 face buttons, a joystick, a D-pad, a triangular start button, and 2 analog triggers. Interesting to note is the analog triggers on the controller are actually pressure sensitive. I'm really not sure what this would be used for, but I would venture a guess and say some racing games might support it. But I guess we'll find out once we actually start playing the games. At the top of the controller are 2 slots for things like the Visual Memory Unit, or VMU, and other accessories like the Jump Pack. The window on the front of the controller lets you see the VMU screen, and some games do make interesting use of this feature, but again, once we actually get to those games, we can review it. This leads to a common complaint, however, because all the real estate at the top of the controller is taken up by the VMU slots. The actual controller cable comes out of the bottom of the controller. To get this out of the way, there are these 2 clip things to hold the controller cable in place. People really like to blow this out of proportion when talking about this thing. Never once as a kid or now did I find this to be an issue, and it never got in my way. Another common complaint is the 1 joystick on the controller. This was at a time when 2 was starting to become standard. It is odd, and it takes some getting used to if you play more recent consoles, especially for first-person shooters. On the Dreamcast, most FPS games mimic GoldenEye a little bit. You use the thumbstick to move, the face buttons to aim, the D-pad for items and for weapon switching, and the triggers to fire or throw grenades. You get used to it pretty quickly, and for platformers and every other type of game pretty much, the controller is just fine. Yet another common complaint is the D-pad and analog stick themselves. For one, they're both made of a pretty unforgiving and sometimes sharpish plastic. For a console full of ports of arcade fighters and shooters, the D-pad is pretty underwhelming, especially since the Sega Saturn D-pad is so revered. Growing up, it never really bothered me, and I used to play Marvel vs. Capcom all the time with just the standard controller, although I probably just didn't know any better. Now, the analog joystick can wear on your thumb quite a bit, but again, it never really became an issue for me, except maybe after 5 hours of playing through Bangai-O. You know, I have to say, I like this thing. I think it's fine, but if you don't, well, good news, because the Dreamcast has a lot of different controllers and accessories that we can cover in detail later. Arcade sticks, light guns, fishing rods, a mouse and keyboard, and even some third-party adapters let you use a PlayStation or Saturn controller instead. This thing came in a lot of colors too. In North America alone, you had the standard white, there was solid black, only available with the Sega Sports Edition console, the only console variant in North America, I might add. There's also blue, green, red, the increasingly harder to find and unnecessarily expensive yellow, and of course, what late 90s, early 2000s console would be complete without smoke? Excuse me, it's not smoke, it's charcoal anthracite, for whatever fucking reason. Japan had even more colors, with many of them being available only through their now defunct Dreamcast Direct store. Now, I only have a couple I can show you, but there are a lot of these Dreamcast colors, and they're all really cool. They came in simple brown boxes like this, and my personal favorite is wood, which not only looks awesome, but is actually pretty unique as it's one of the few controllers that has a different plastic color on the back instead of the usual black and white. Even the controller port is brown, which is pretty neat. Oh, also, there's leopard print. Well, I think that just about does it for the first episode. Told you it wouldn't take long. Now that we've gotten the controllers out of the way, we can actually start reviewing some games. So, join us next time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow us on Twitter, and, if you're so inclined, you can check out our Patreon. Thanks for watching. Whoa. Don't stutter, and it'll be great. This is going to be a pain in the ass for you to edit and find the good ones, of which there are almost none yet.